But it gives me an opportunity as the budget comes over tonight now, Mr. President, from the House of Representatives, to point out one of the most onerous provisions in the budget, which is just passed with sweeping bipartisan support in the House of Representatives. I will stand before this body tonight and say that I cannot vote and will not vote for this budget, and I hope that even yet members of the Congress and the American public will listen to the broken promise that is contained in this budget that will be coming forward. And then we'll perhaps get back to the nomination in a moment. But we should know two things about this budget. It asks an additional contribution for pensions for federal employees, but it doesn't do it to current federal employees. Because if you enter the federal service after the beginning of the year, you pay an additional amount that is withheld from your paycheck for your pension. Now that's a hard thing to do, it's distasteful to do, but at least it's fair to the people who joined the federal service under one set of rules. On the other hand, the budget that comes over to us from the House of Representatives, and that I will oppose when it eventually does come up for a vote, hopefully next week, does to retired servicemen what we were persuaded not to do on federal employees. It breaks a promise to retired service people who've already served their time. And it does this, Mr. President. It says to every retired service member under the age of 62, you're not going to get your COLA anymore. Each year until you get to be 62, you're going to get your COLA less 1%. And I can tell you that this is not a matter of nickels and dimes to the people who have stepped forward, joined the military, volunteered for a career in the military, done their 20, and now are going to be told if this resolution, if this budget passes next week, we're sorry. We're changing the rules way after the game has begun. I want to submit at this point, Mr. President, for the record, a letter to me from Vice Admiral Norb Ryan, United States Navy retired, President of the Military Officers Association of America. May I submit that for the record at this point, Mr.
Without objection.
And let me just point out what the retired Vice Admiral says. On behalf of the 380,000 members of the Military Officers Association of America, I am writing to express our strong opposition to the proposal within the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2013, which penalizes future uniformed service retirees and current retirees under the age of 62, even though the budget deal would help ease the harmful effects of sequestration for 2 years for the Department of Defense, something we support. Doing so on the backs of service members who serve our nation for over 20 years is just shameful. And I would interject at this point, Mr. President, I have to agree with that statement. The Vice Admiral goes on to say, reducing working age retiree annual cost of living adjustment by 1% until they reach the age of 62 is simply a tax. Service members who retire at the 20-year point would feel the full negative financial effects of the proposal by reducing their retired pay by nearly 20% by the time they reach the age of 62. And this is the pertinent part, Mr. President, of the letter which I am inserting to the record at this point. For example, and my colleagues should hear me on this, Mr. President, an Army Sergeant First Class E7 retiring this year with 20 years of service would see an average loss of over $3,700 per year by the time he or she reaches age 62, a cumulative loss of nearly $83,000. That's what this budget, bipartisan budget resolution, does to the retired military enlisted people who have volunteered to serve our country for 20 years and who joined under one set of rules. $83,000 lifetime taken from this retired E7. For a lieutenant colonel, 05, the average annual loss would be over $6,200 annually, a cumulative loss of over $124,000. This, I'll yield on this absolutely to my friend from
Senator from Georgia.
I know the senator from Mississippi was on active duty in the Air Force for several years and has stayed in contact with many members of the military, not just as a result of your service on the Armed Services Committee, but just because you're very keenly interested in the welfare of the men and women in our military. And if I'm hearing the senator from Mississippi correctly on this particular issue, what you're saying is that an E7 who served in Iraq, served in Afghanistan, conceivably served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, maybe even was awarded major meritorious recognition, is now going to have the promise that was made to him about his retirement reduced retroactively? Do I understand that correct?
Rules, if this budget passes and is signed into law by President Obama, will be changed on this individual retroactively. And the result will be, instead of the retirement pay he signed up for and agreed to under the law when he did his duty, an $83,000 loss lifetime.
Mr. President, again, if I can inquire of the senator, you, as I say, have been very close to any number of military personnel through the years that you have served in this body, as well as your service in the Mississippi legislature, and just by virtue of the fact of practicing law in Tupelo, Mississippi. What is the opinion of the senator from Mississippi as to the morale influence that a provision like this is going to have on our men and women in the military, but not just those that are retired, but active duty military today?
You know, I can only imagine that it's a severe blow to morale, and also it has to make people who are willing to step forward and risk their lives, be separated from months and years from their loved ones, has to make them wonder, what else is being promised to me that's going to be taken away?
And you mentioned also the reduction in federal retirement pay, which we've got to figure out ways to save money. We all know and understand that. And there is a change in the pension for federal retirees, but it's all prospective.
Right. We don't do anything. Forward. We don't do anything to any other federal employees retroactively. Only the military in this budget. I can't imagine how the public could think that is fair.
Well, I'm very sympathetic, even though I never served on active duty in the military as you did, but this is very, very strange, and it's very difficult to understand why we would penalize the men and women who wear the who have worn or do wear the uniform of the United States versus a very similar provision for the men and women who serve the government of the United States in a very honorable way, but we're treating them very, very differently, and it seems like almost discriminatorily.
I tell you who else believes it's discriminatory. I have a list of members of the military coalition listed in a letter to the Honorable Harry Reid and the Honorable Mitch McConnell dated December 11, 2013. Mr. President, I would ask at this point that this letter be inserted into the record.
Without objection.
And I would simply say in answer to the distinguished gentleman from Georgia, here are the groups that are expressing outrage, dismay, and strong opposition to this provision. The Air Force Sergeants Association, Air Force Women Officers Associated, AMVETS, AMSUS, Association of the United States Navy, Chief Warrant Officer and Warrant Officer Association, U.S. Coast Guard, Commissioned Officers Association of the U.S. Public Health Service, Incorporated, Enlisted Association of the National Guard of the United States, Fleet Reserve Association, Gold Star Wives, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America, Marine Corps League, Marine Corps Reserve Association, Military Officers Association of America, Military Order of the Purple Heart, National Association for Uniformed Services, National Guard Association of the United States, National Military Family Association, Naval Enlisted Reserve Association, Society of Medical Consultants to the Armed Forces, the Military Chaplains Association of the United States of America, the Retired Enlisted Association, United States Army Warrant Officers Association, United States Coast Guard Chief Petty Officers Association, Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, and Vietnam Veterans of America. This distinguished list of organizations consisting of members and former members of the United States military have registered their opposition. I can only hope at this point that members of the Senate will listen to this. This is a so-called savings of $6 billion out of an $80 billion package. Surely we can find $6 billion without putting an $80,000 penalty on the back of an E-7 retired enlisted person who's not rich, who served honorably under one set of rules, and who's been now told sorry. And I have to say this. When people see the government not keeping their promises, I think it's destructive to our system of government, and it's exactly the sort of thing we're seeing with Obamacare. I mean, it's not being overly repetitive to remind my colleagues that the President of the United States, Barack Obama, repeatedly, over and over, promised the American people that they could keep their insurance. For example, in his speech to the American Medical Association on June 15, 2009, President Obama stated, "No matter how we reform health care, we will keep this promise to the American people." Another promise. If you like your doctor, you'll be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan, period. No one will take it away, no matter what. The words of the leader of the free world, Mr. President. And of course, we know from story after story of real people who are being hurt by this law that time after time after time again, in thousands of homes across the United States of America, that promise, just as the promise made to the servicemen, that promise is being broken. If my friend from Georgia will indulge me, let me give one example of a family of real individuals, honest, hardworking Americans who feel that another promise is being broken in the form of the so-called affordable health care. I got an email from a father in Greenville, Mississippi, who's concerned about his 27-year-old son. For the past 6 years, his son was covered under a policy provided by Humana. When the healthy 20-year-old first received coverage, the policy protected against major medical emergency, and the cost was only $70 a month. The president told the American public, if you like your health care plan, then you can keep your health care plan. According to this father in Greenville, Mississippi, this policy is no longer available, and the plan available for his son will now cost just under $350 per month, as opposed to $70 a month. A broken promise, Mr. President. The healthy 27-year-old who works in the automotive industry has been working since he was 20. and he now questions whether he can afford to insure himself at all because the cost has quadrupled. His discretionary income will now take a huge hit, just as the discretionary income of these retired heroes will take a huge hit. And the higher premiums will cause uncertainty in his family. I know my friend from Georgia may want to give some examples of some people in his home state who feel like, once again, in this instance also, a promise has been made, a very explicit promise, and in a very blatant way, that promise turned out not to be the case at all.